I have thought way too much about schooling, and so now I think I'm a little bit of an authority on the topic of learning photography. Hey friends, it's your good friend Tim Campbell Smith, and today we are talking about the big ways that you may learn photography. How to learn photography. I think it's so common, and I know this was my experience where like I bought equipment and then I was like, now what? I'd argue that we're going to go over the main ways that people learn photography, and no one way is better. There's a time and a place for all of them, and there's some ways that are a little more common than others. I love that when I hear stories from famous photographers and how they learned photography, all styles are represented. You have photographers who were self-made and learned on their own. You have photographers who went to college. You have photographers who went to university. So we're going to talk about all the different ways of learning photography. Before we go too far, make sure you like and subscribe for all things photography, mental health, business, higher ed, and life. In short, here's the general list, the different ways that you can learn photography. You can learn it by going to school. You can learn kind of through self-made techniques. And I actually break those down between trial and error, which is mostly error and some trial, playing and exploration, but then you may also learn from events or online learning platforms like LinkedIn Learning. Let's start with the self-made route. I do break it down into two different ways of going the self-made route because the more I talked to photographers and learned about how they did it, I really did see a difference. And I want to talk about those differences and when we may use those learning strategies and when we won't. The first way that you can learn photography is through play and exploration. You get your own gear. Heck, maybe you even use just like a cell phone, and you learn through play, through curiosity, through exploration, just kind of wondering, what can I do? What can I create? How will I create this? You typically do it for your own, on your own, for fun, post it on social media, and it generally ends there. Most people tend to start here. I know I started here, and then use this strategy throughout. I do think a sense of wonder, of curiosity and play is necessary in any profession, but especially in something so creative like photography. Really do think this is a great career-long practice. Now, the other self-made route you may go is trial and error. I do, specify this because this is where there are some things at stake, typically where you're trying it out on someone or on a business. It's funny, as an educator, I find that there is really interesting research around how learning occurs when there are higher stakes. For example, we learn about material as we take a test and demonstrate what we have learned in a test. And part of that is because something's at stake. So I do think this is actually kind of a good way of learning. And even if you're a well-established professional, having something at risk and at stake can kind of help with learning. So this is also a way of learning is practicing your photography when someone has paid you or when you have a project, when you have a deadline. Both the for fun route and the trial and error route, they're both self-made. They have low cost, low barrier to entry. You are in control of the learning experience, which is what makes it so exciting and enticing, really. I would also argue with both of those, you miss out on little tips and tricks, discussions, the ability to critique, or to be critiqued, and to improve from there. So that's a nice segue into events. If there's anything I've learned coming into the world of photography, it's that there are so many different events and so many different groups and companies and organizations and photographers who are teaching through events that are accessible to many. These might be hosted or sponsored through like photography companies like Henry's or Canon or Nikon, for example, or they may include like retreats and training from specific photographers. One, and this is totally like not a planned sponsorship or endorsement or anything, but like there's a street photographer I love, Valerie Jardin, and a big part of what she does is like offering these retreats 2 to 4 days, multiple times throughout the year to go learn street photography with her. That's an event you could go to. Or it could be done through industry. So I know here in Canada, we have the Professional Photographers of Canada. They offer, they have a main event every year, and then there may be other spin-off events, so you can learn from others throughout the year as well. That then, another way that you can learn photography would be online learning. And actually, I want to highlight LinkedIn Learning. In researching this, I was trying to look up, like, what are all the different ways that you can learn about photography through LinkedIn Learning? And there were so many different things you could learn. Now, please note, there is a difference on LinkedIn Learning between a course, a video, and a learning path. Typically, you want a course or a learning path. Learning path is the longest. It has the greatest amount of content, usually combines courses into a theme. Courses are on one topic taught many different ways, and then a video is just that. It's a single video. There are so many topics when it comes to photography. I kind of find it funny that, like, in marketing and digital marketing, yes, there's lots of LinkedIn Learning, but there are some very clear gaps and some things really missing. But I didn't find that in photography. I think photography is really well represented through LinkedIn Learning. So you could learn about cameras and lenses. You could learn technical tips like exposure, different settings, depth of field, stuff like that. But then you can also learn styles of photography. You can take whole courses or learning paths in, like, food photography. Portrait is a big one that was available that I saw. Or you can learn other concepts. Like there's LinkedIn Learning courses on the business of photography. A lot of it's there. It's fantastic. LinkedIn Learning is fantastic, and online learning is fantastic. If you want, like, a little bit of formal education, you want those tips and tricks, you want to be self-directed, so you choose how quickly or how slowly you go through it. Without really slowing down. The problem is you're not usually interacting with people. Again, you miss out on the ability to be critiqued, to build on it, or to really practice. Like, you can practice based on the tasks they give you, but you don't know how well it's going. And that largely comes down to that lack of critique. Finally, you can learn about photography by going to school. Now, I've done a few videos on this, and I'll link them somewhere with this video, but you can go to school. There's different schoolings that you can do. Just to summarize what's in that other video, you could do, like, a certificate program through continuing education, you could do a diploma, or you could do, like, a degree. You can also go on to graduate training. You can definitely do, like, a master's or PhD in photography. At that point, though, it's more so in, like, fine art, and you're doing photography as an art. This is for building a community of people like you and networking as you go, but also networking with your profs. Really big for critiques, but I will say, especially with schooling, whether you go the diploma route or the degree route, typically a very common part of your art education is being critiqued, where you show a photograph and your instructor, sometimes even your colleagues and fellow students, will critique your work. You've got to be able to handle that. With this, I want to say all of these ways of learning photography are fair and sacred and valid and work at different times. I hope everybody keeps exploring and playing in photography and in life. And I also like trial and error, having some stakes. For example, at the time of recording, I'm working through creating my first art show. I have almost a year to do it, but I definitely have some pressure because I have to get a certain number of photos every season. And if I don't get it right in that season, I kind of lose out. So there's a little bit of pressure, and I love that. But I also love that I get to explore and just play with my options. Those are great. You can also learn online. I don't know about you, but I particularly love how it's so self-directed and you can choose what you want to learn. Or you can do formal schooling. Definitely comes with a price tag and you got to put in the work. But all of these are fair, sacred, and valid ways of learning photography. This is something I do love about it, is that there's somewhat of a low barrier to entry. You do have to pay for the gear, but after that, it's a build your own adventure. You are driving this bus, so figure out where you're going to drive it. Comment and let me know. Where have you learned photography, or where would you be inclined to learn about this? As always, make sure you like and subscribe for all things photography, mental health, business, and life. Otherwise, we'll chat soon. Bye for now.